So I am the director of workforce and people analytics within the university HR organization at Stanford University. And I've been doing that for about 4 years. The investment in people is actually the biggest investment in most organizations. So when you think about it from just the value proposition, uh, you can really get the interest of finance as well as HR. About 2 years ago, I attended a presentation at one of these people analytic conferences, and the presenter was actually part of ISO. He's been part of ISO for quite a few years. What is this ISO thing? I didn't even know about it actually at that time. And what I really like about the process is you get to meet a lot of people, with different expertise and perspectives, and it's great. It's great actually seeing not only the perspective in the U.S. but also across the globe.
And one of the things that this project does is sort of open your mind to a broader way of looking at the practices of HR, human capital, and finance in a more objective and, dare I say, inclusive approach. You really have to speak an inclusive language of business. Very seldom do I see people with a very narrow focus understand the value add of this type of process.
I still see the people analytics profession as still kind of a greenfield area, actually. From a skill set just in HR, there needs to be a higher level skill in the future, with HR professionals. Leaders are asking more and more information about what's happening with people. ISO is providing, is providing a framework that I think will be very beneficial to this discipline and profession going forward. If you have standards, you can talk to that with leaders too. It's like, we're not just doing this here in this organization. We are also doing this in a way that's consistent with other organizations that we compete with. It's important that we get to a better level of consistency in the future about the way that we measure things.
I think a lot of people working in HR make assumptions that a lot of the measures that they do, metrics otherwise, are already standardized. And it's only when they have more diversity of experience that they realize, no, well, all of a sudden you realize that we're not speaking the same language. And the power of the standard is what can we agree upon so that we can move forward and add value. How can this be applied?
So the ISO 30414 document really is pretty consistent in its scope. I constantly have that document in front of me and some other related documents in the TC260 space to refer to, and sometimes in discussions I just say right here, this is something we should consider as we are approaching how we're trying to measure this particular piece of our activity. I see a bit of parallels between what I was used to in the finance area, where you had something like GAAP, the generally accepted accounting principles. And GAAP provides guidance, essentially, that I think without GAAP, it would be more difficult for finance to measure things. I see the stuff that we're doing with ISO, and by the way, even some of the stuff that's happening with the Securities and Exchange Commission now in the U.S., and I've also heard in other countries like Japan, where they are getting closer to having more requirements on human capital. So all of that should really have a premise that there's a guiding standard underneath that.
I often challenge HR people, in terms of the concept of, removing subjectivity from decision making. Isn't that a good thing? Isn't that something that we aspire for in recruiting, in interviewing, in measuring performance, in progressive discipline processes, grievances, however you contextualize it? We professionally want things to be more objective. Yet when that spotlight of objectivity is shone upon the person or the head of the HR human capital function, sometimes we push back.
I think there's a level of proving yourself, proving yourself that you can deliver on things that are meaningful to leadership. There's a lot of need for building relationships, but I think a lot of organizations are at a stage, and our organization is too, where we're building up this function more and more as a key function within the organization.
People analytics builds upon data analytics, and data analytics preempts computers. That existed before we had this machine that helped us, crunch numbers in a better way.
I'm not necessarily trying to advocate. What I'm doing is actually participating in a number of different efforts, that some of those are actually being driven by the top. The ISO efforts are really hitting on some of the main themes that I see within organizations. There was a newer standard that came out, ISO30414, on diversity, and diversity is continuing to be a very important area to address. I mean, every time I participate in an ISO meeting, I learn something new. It's really interesting to see who participates in those too. So it's really a mix of people, and you do see people not just in HR, but you see IT people, you see finance people, you see marketing people, you see quite a few people that are just generally interested in this area. Yeah, I just keep your mind open to networking in many different ways. I mean, I think everybody's trying to learn from each other. So the more you can do that, the better.